know that the PEI Dental Association recently came out, commended the plan. The other dental associations, we've really answered all of their concerns. I'm talking to them, and just as recently as last week in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, with very positive conversations there. So I think that we're getting there.
Canada's new dental care program is getting there. That's Health Minister Mark Holland's message as the opposition Conservatives cry foul over the program's rollout. The Liberals are hitting back, arguing the Tories just want to tear the whole thing up. Our front bench is back to talk about the political strategy involved in that and moving forward toward the summer barbecue season. Carleen Varayan, Gary Marr, Carl Bélanger, and Najoud Almaliz. Carleen, I'll start with you. There's an interesting, I think, conversation happening around this dental care program. There are legitimate concerns being raised about the rollout of it, but at the same time, it provides, I think, a real proof point for the Liberals to be able to say, here's what you won't have if you do vote for the Conservatives.
Yeah. I mean, this is coming up right at the exact point that they want in this pre-election era that we find ourselves in. It allows Trudeau and his cabinet to hit the hustings at some point next year, being able to tell Canadians, here's what's at stake. Here are the things that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives will most likely be taking away. It's $10 a day childcare. It's your dental care plan. It's universal pharmacare for contraceptives and for insulin. All of these things are at risk. So think about that when you go into the ballot box. I think it's lining up really well for the Liberals. And I think that what we see so far in public opinion polling and in the uptake in the places in the country where the dental plan has been in place now is pretty telling. You know, you hear stories like dentists and hygienists saying, I've never seen so many cavities and plaque, scrapings in my life because of these waves of seniors that are coming in for their first dental treatment in years because they can finally afford it. I think that's going to be a really tough thing to take away once it's been given. So it does present a bit of a challenge for the Conservatives in terms of how they're going to handle it.
The interesting thing I'm also watching for in that vein, Gary, is also alongside polling, in that a lot of Canadians look at these programs and have a very favorable view of them, but we haven't seen a corresponding increase for the Liberals as a direct result of the introduction, for example, of this program or the promises made through the budget. I am very curious to see, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on whether the two things eventually will correspond or if there are other forces at play that might essentially mean that the Liberals don't get credit for this kind of stuff.
Well, you use the word force, and I would make the observation that there's no greater force in politics than the momentum for change. And I think that Pierre Poilievre is saying that he is the change agent. I don't expect his messaging to change that much. I mean, I think about Ralph Klein, who would say, tell him what you're going to tell him, then tell him what you told him. And then when you're bored of it, repeat. And I think that, it's a strategy that's important, particularly in the world that we live in, where we are bombarded with media, terabytes of information every single hour of the day. So I don't think that Pierre Poilievre is going to change his messaging. It's worked for him so far, and I think he'll continue to do it. With respect to whether these programs are good or not, doesn't really seem like the issue for most Canadians. I think that most Canadians are looking at their costs overall. Dental is only part of it. Pharmaceuticals only part of it. It's about groceries. It's about fuel. It's about taxes. It's a whole host of things. And the Liberals have a great deal of a hole to climb out of. Now, you don't want to peak too soon. So I think it's worthy of note that everybody seems to be in an election mode right now for an election that's not going to happen for quite some time to come. So lots can happen between now and October of 2025.
Yeah, Najoud, it's felt like that for a while. I think Gary said it much more eloquently than me. I guess what I meant is, will that sentiment for change ultimately mean that the wedges that the Liberals are, I think, justifiably putting forward around, like, here's all the stuff we're offering that we don't know what the Conservatives will do with, like, will that essentially not work because there is that strong sentiment for change?
I think it depends on how people's feelings change when interest rates come down, when the economy maybe picks up a little bit more than it is right now. I think also the capital gains fight also has the potential of potentially being a better wedge because Mr. Poilievre has not said how he will vote on that policy versus some of the other ones where he kind of takes the wedge away by saying, no, actually, you know what, we're going to vote for this, or yeah, we are for, you know, we're going to vote for the anti-scab legislation or things like that. On the flip side, though, I think it'll be interesting to see how the Conservatives start adjusting their economic message with time, because I think you look at the last year or so, we went from just inflation to the high cost of everything and interest rates. And now as we enter this new phase of potential rate cuts that might come as early June, it's going to take away another thing to talk about a little bit from the Conservatives, and how will they maneuver and adjust to that. You know, yesterday Mr. Poilievre was talking about the government not locking in cheap debt and talking about government spending. Is that going to be the big new focus? And so I'm curious to see how the next 5 weeks play out on that front, if specifically we get a rate cut on June 5th.
Yeah, I think even if we do get the rate cut, it will be, I mean, Najib would know better than me, but everything I've read is that it will be small and it will be incremental and it will be over time. So and it will never be 0% again, which might impact, I mean, even one cut might impact sentiment, but to really have a pronounced impact, it might take more than that.
Yes, it may take more than that. And the thing is, it doesn't change the narrative. It doesn't change the narrative, which is, after 8 years of Justin Trudeau, do you want 4 more years of Justin Trudeau?
9 years.
9 years. They're up to 9 years now. So, you know, that won't change. And so that momentum for change, it's a hard thing to fight in politics. Now, the thing that is important to remember is that when you know, we're talking about the dental care policy, what's interesting from a strategic point of view is that the Liberals are picking a fight about a program that's not fully there yet, saying, you know, if you like this program that you don't have, you will lose it if you elect these guys. So it's a bit of a stretch. That said, most people who have signed up are really keen on keeping it.
Yeah.
And tactically, it has the added advantage of marginalizing the NDP, who are behind that policy in the first place, but they're not part of the conversation as much because now it's owned by the Liberal brand, a Liberal government. And that's the key challenge for the NDP, to try to capture a bit of that change momentum. They're not able to do that because they're not part of that narrative.
Which is so interesting because they're actually the ones who drove. Dental care was the key thing that got this deal done, and now the Liberals are able to.
hard to get it.
Yes.
And it took forever, and now they have it, and suddenly it's the Liberal brand.
And make no mistake, the Liberals will campaign on that in the next election, without a doubt.
Politics is wild. That's why we love it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to our front bench. Appreciate it. Carleen Varayan, Gary Mar, Carl Belanger, and Najud Al-Maliz.